Okay, so there we go. So Joe, I'm turning it over to you.
Okay, and you think we're ready to start?
Wait a minute. I can't see anybody. What happened?
Is Queenie here yet?
Yeah, I'm here, but I don't know. I've done something. I don't know what happened. I don't see anybody. I can hear you, but
Okay, let me, I'm going to ask you to start video and let's see if something should come up and you can click start video.
wait a minute. I may have to launch, maybe I have to launch this again because I can hear you, but I'm looking at the bottom to see where it is.
Yeah, because there should be something that shows a little video camera. And
Okay.
Actually, it's to the right where it says more. Oh, there you are, Queenie.
Yeah.
there she is. Welcome, Queenie.
Really? I don't see you guys.
We see you, but yeah, you don't see us, huh?
I see nothing.
Well, Queenie, there's 42 people here you're talking to.
Yep.
You can't see us all.
No, I don't.
So
Let me see.
just talk and we'll listen.
Yeah. When we get started,
Do you wanna-
we can see you.
I got it now. I can see you now.
Okay, good.
All right.
Oh,
There you go.
All right, well, let's get started. It looks like we have a good set of folks. I see 43 people in the meeting. We've got an important topic today, displacement of longstanding communities along the Route 1 corridor. We're going to hear from Queenie Cox of the Gum Springs Civic Association, along with Brenda Faison. And then Mary Paden's going to talk to us about issues related to the mobile home park south of Route 1. But as we get started, let's start as we always do with a blessing. Reverend Smith, with your wonderful background, could you get us started?
Let us pray. Instruct the wise man, and he will be wiser still. Teach a righteous man or woman, and they will learn more. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. For by wisdom your days will be many, and years will be added for your life. Proverbs 9. Lord, we ask of your blessings to empower us this morning with unparalleled wisdom and knowledge, that we can love each other unconditionally and to give without constraints. Liberate us from those things that has entrapped us. Teach us to be doers of your word and not hearers only. Thank you, God, for your love, grace, and mercy. We ask for your blessings upon the leadership of this committee and for those who are on the call. This is our prayer. This is our request. We all say amen.
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 Thank you, Reverend Smith. So again, I'm Joe Fay, Facet's Executive Director, along with Bill Collins. Welcome to another Zoom session of the VIC meetings. We've been doing this for a while. Today's topic, as I said, displacement of longstanding communities along the Route 1 corridor. And I'm very happy to welcome Queenie Cox to our meeting of the Gum Springs Civic Association to talk about the gentrification of Gum Springs, which is the longest, I believe the oldest African-American community in Fairfax County. It's an important topic that we've spent a lot of time talking about. Queenie, Brenda, please take it away.
Thank you. I'm going to start, if you can, at the beginning, and then I'll turn it over to Queenie. Gum Springs community, the next slide, please. Gum Springs was founded in 1833 by a former enslaved man named Wes Ford. And the interesting thing with Wes Ford, even though he was a former slave, he purchased Gum Springs for $966. The land that is we now see as Gum Springs for $966. He also worked for a long time at the George Washington plantation, where he was freed by one of the owners. Gum Springs has endured more than 187 years, despite daunting hurdles. And those hurdles included slavery, it included Reconstruction, it included Jim Crow, it included lack of education. It included many kinds of things that we take for granted or we think may not have happened. These people were able to really endure for over 187 years. It is the oldest African-American community in Fairfax County. And as you can see, the community today is made up of bungalows, modern brick colonials, and townhomes. Some of the landmarks there, of course, is the Gum Springs Community Center, which was at one time a school, the Gum Springs Museum, and 6 churches, including Bethlehem Baptist Church, for which I am a member, and the Martin Luther King Jr. Community Park. Next slide, please. One of the interesting things about the—
I barely remember.
Okay. One of the interesting things about the Gum Springs community also, in 1897, there was a joint stock club that came together with the pastor of Bethlehem Baptist Church and his trustees, and they bought 23 acres of land and divided them up and sold them to other individuals that helped to build up the community. I have here the elimination of the poll tax because that has a major impact on what took place in Gum Springs. Many times we tend to lose things in African-American history, but I found this and I thought it was important that we hear about it. This little lady on the left-hand side is named Annie E Harper. She was a member of Bethlehem Baptist Church. She was 79 years of age. And at the age of 79, she decided that she wanted to vote in the county. She wanted to vote in the election in 1964. When she went to vote, she was told she could not vote because she had not paid her poll tax. Poll tax came into being in the early, as part of the ending of Reconstruction, but mainly it became an impact for African Americans in 1901. When the Virginia Constitution was rewritten to support the whole concept of poll tax. As a result of the poll tax going into effect in 1901, just to give you an idea, prior to that time in the city of Richmond, you had 3,000 people who were registered to vote. After the poll tax went into effect, only 30 people were eligible to vote. So if you take that and bring it down to a community like Gum Springs, there were very few people who were eligible. There were some people who were eligible to vote, but they had to do it at very high costs. And it also had a major impact on what was going on in Gum Springs. Gum Springs has always been a community that had pride in itself. It started as a small farming community. The people had their farms, but then around 1930, I think between 1930 and around 1934, the highway was widened. And when the Route 1 highway was widened or expanded, one of the things that happened as a result of it is that it increased the drainage problem that Gum Springs already had, but it made it even worse. And so for the period of 30 years, the residents of Gum Springs fought with the county or struggled with the county to get them to come down and help remove the drainage problem that was going on in Gum Springs. they did not get to do it until the 1960s. So if you can imagine, from the 30s to the 60s, these people are going to the Board of Supervisors, they're talking with them, they're trying to get them to deal with the drainage problem, and they refuse to do so. One incident, they stated that that the county would do so much and then the residents would have to do the rest, which was unfair to them. Then when they finally agreed, I think it was in 1950, that the county would deal with the drainage, they had to wait another 15 years because they were then told that they didn't have any money to do so. So what that did is create really a bad taste in the minds of the residents that the county really does not need their aid. It was not until the 60s as well that roads were finally paved. And it actually, you saw more happen after the poll tax was eliminated, because it gave African Americans an opportunity to have a voice. One of the things that happens without having a voice, it made people feel powerless. And so once the poll tax went in, this little lady, Anna E Harper, and Curtis Myrtle Burr, Gladys Berry, were all members of the Gum Springs community and Spring Banks community. And between them and another person out of Norfolk, they made a file against the Supreme Court, and the poll tax eventually was removed. Next slide, please. The case was heard in Alexandria in 1964. And as you can see through here, it went all the way up to 1965. 1965, they appealed the decision on behalf of Butts. That was the other person that joined the case. And all of this took place to try to erase the poll tax. If you look at the next slide, please. The Harper versus Virginia Board of Election, the actual law bill was named after Anna E Harper. Board of Election was, the poll tax was removed in March of 1966 by the decision of the Supreme Court. And as a result of that, Virginia adopted a new constitution in 1971. And finally, what happens is, if you go to the next slide, the elimination of the poll tax gave people a voice again, which helped them to be able to stand up and fight more for their rights and to be heard. It inspired the civil rights by the civil rights movement and the ending of the poll tax. Gum Springs residents began again to organize, demanding their fair share of the county services. They paid taxes, but they were not getting their fair share. Roads were finally paved. Sewer lines were installed. And let me just back up one thing here. One of the things that happened, and it makes it really look bad, is because they didn't have sewer lines. What happened is the health department came in the 60s as well and condemned a lot of the homes there. And you probably said, well, they should have repaired their homes. Well, when we also look into the records, we found that banks would not give them loans so that they could repair their homes. So when you see the homes, it wasn't that people didn't care or didn't want to, but there were so many obstacles put in their way. So anyway, after the neighborhood children had been sent to desegregated schools. Finally, they were able to get education that they needed, and the community began to flourish. And I'm going to stop there and let Queenie continue with what's going on as of today. But hopefully you can see that the community has always had a strong sense of pride, has always struggled to survive, and has also had to fight, not just within, but had to fight mainly with sources on the outside that prevented them from moving forward.
Thank you, Brenda. And just to, Brenda did a great job in outlining what the challenges that Gum Springs had throughout the years. And like she said, even though the residents of Gum Springs paid their taxes, they still weren't seen as equal residents for services provided by the county or the state. And like Brenda stated about having poor drainage, sewer issues, that it was not until the Gum Springs community sued Fairfax County in order to get the services, the basic services for to address the drainage in the sewer systems. So, and we continue as a community to encounter issues that threaten Gum Springs. And our three major issues are land use, traffic, and residential segregation. And I'll go into each one a little bit in depth as we go along. And ever since the founding of Gum Springs, as Brenda stated, that we're constantly having to encounter challenges that we really should not have to encounter. So even when we're trying to be proactive on certain issues, including one of the three major issues I've listed, we find ourselves often in a reactive situation. So next slide, please. Okay, now, and in dealing with the land use, we just, in order to have redevelopment in Gum Springs, there are three major documents that guides redevelopment in the Gum Springs community. And they're all affected by the zoning ordinance. And Gum Springs was made, I would say, special by saying that we had a neighborhood improvement plan that went, hold on, I'm sorry. We had a special document was created for zoning, which was the Neighborhood Improvement Plan and Conservation Plan and the Gum Springs Redevelopment Plan. So that went hand in hand to provide protection to the Gum Springs community so that, that the residents would not be forced to move or displaced for new development. And so all of that was supposed to be incorporated into the zoning ordinance so that the county would be aware of this special protection that was provided to Gum Springs so that the residents could not be displaced or relocated. So the agencies that are within the county, there are several of them, as you can see, like housing, the zoning, the park authority. None of those agencies really cross-reference their projects with each other in a meaningful way, and to prevent any adverse impact to the Gum Springs community. And that's one of the reasons why we often find ourselves in a proactive status. Next slide, please. Okay, now the Neighborhood Improvement Plan and Conservation Plan, and we often refer to that as the Conservation Plan. And that document, along with the Gum Springs Redevelopment Plan, are extremely important to Gum Springs because it does actually provide the protection that the community needs to prevent dislocation of the residents. And to give you an example of the challenges that we continue to face with Fairfax County in order to protect the community from displacement with redevelopment, when developers come in and want to change the look of the community, is that the Board of Supervisors approved Gum Springs to update its conservation plan, and they actually assigned county staff to work with the community so that we could update the plan and continue the protection for the community against any adverse impact, be it traffic, be it land use for redevelopment. Now, we submitted that plan to the county back in 2015. As of today, the county is still reviewing the draft plan. So why it's taking 5 years, I have no clue. But this is a major challenge to the Gum Springs community. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, now, even though I said I have no idea why it's taking this long for the county to provide their review and comments on the conservation plan that provides the protection to Gum Springs for against displacement, it is my, pardon me?
I think it was just a little echo.
I guess someone was speaking.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Okay. Is that I believe that the county is on a mission to de-designate Gum Springs as a conservation area. And if Gum Springs is if that designation is removed, then that also removes the protection that Gum Springs currently have that protects it from being displaced through redevelopment. And how we know this is that there have been, over the years, first off, they didn't alert the community that the conservation plan had expired or was about to be expired. And since then, there have been numerous attempts to have the protection language removed from the comprehensive plan. However, after numerous meetings and challenges to the language, the Board of Supervisors agreed to retain the language in the comprehensive plan. So it's still in effect, and the Gum Springs redevelopment plan, it did not have an expiration date, which is a major support for the Gum Springs community to continue with its protection. So, and with that, with them trying to remove the designation for Gum Springs as a conservation area, the Board of Supervisors approved $60,000 for a heritage survey to be conducted to see if Gum Springs could become a historic district. Now, that designation, that does not guarantee protection either, but the historic designation may enhance the property values. So I did ask the county about this survey compared to the updated conservation plan. The two are totally unrelated, but they will provide some limited protection to the Gum Springs community, but the conservation plan provides the best. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, now another reason perhaps that that community residents are dissatisfied, or if they, would like to leave the community, is pretty much like everyone else around this area. And that is that traffic is endangering the community. This is a small, compact, and diverse community. And we have had traffic concerns and issues since way back in the 60s. And I actually even have our first newspaper. It was called the Gum Springs News, and they addressed Richmond Highway. And as Brenda even mentioned about the problems when Richmond Highway was widened. Well, this document from back in the 60s actually states that the community provided a solution, recommendation for Richmond Highway as it affects Gum Springs. And the words that I actually remember in the document is that it called Richmond Highway a death trap. And that, so because of these traffic issues, a lot of people, they move out of the city because of, they want less traffic. And so those of you who live in the area close to Gum Springs, or if you have to go to Inova Mount Vernon Hospital, you have seen and endured the increased traffic. And that increased traffic is a result of the Inova Mount Vernon expansion plans, and from the base realignment project at Fort Belvoir, BRAC. And then there's a new housing development called Potomac Trace, which is off of Henson Farm Road, just behind the Mount Vernon Hospital. And it used to be the Brock property. And so that development is sold out. And I believe there's 28 units. And there is no traffic mitigation plan. And that is going to affect Parker's Lane, Henson Farm Road, Sherwood Hall Lane, and Holland Road, and Fortson Road, because people are going to want to travel to, up Richmond Highway or down Richmond Highway. And once you get on Sherwood Hall Lane, you're either going to go straight up to Richmond Highway, or you're going to turn right on Fortson and go around. And this traffic also may impact Hobler Valley Farms, which is Shellhorn Road. So, and then having a bike lane, that's a whole different, we didn't like the bike lane, and we don't understand why the county insisted on putting it there, because it's disjointed, it's not connected. And the traffic, it also endangers the King families that live along Sherwood Hall Lane. Their vehicles have been hit numerous times because the county will not provide the King family the protection that it has provided to the homeowners and the vehicles that park along Sherwood Hall Lane from Parker's Lane to Fort Hunt Road. And the county removed the parking for from Parker's Lane to Richmond Highway, which affects the residents in Gum Springs, specifically Mount Woodley. There are two churches at the corner of Fortson and Sherwood Hall Lane, to include Bethlehem Baptist Church, there, people were parking there for service, and the King family. So the parking creates, the traffic creates a really bad situation there. But now we hope to obtain some answers to the traffic issues, particularly since they do affect the residents, and people will get upset and say, I'm tired of this traffic and I want to move elsewhere. We have confirmed for our community meeting, FC.dot, V.dot, State Senator Scott Sorvell and State Delegate Paul Krizak for our community meeting on February 9th. And the last piece I'll talk about with the traffic is that most of us that live in the area, I haven't gotten to that slide yet, but this is the traffic, is that Walt Whitman Middle School. Everyone in this area knows to not get on Sherwood Hall Lane between certain hours of the day, because all of those students are bused to that school. And you would have thought by now that the Fairfax County Public School System, and I know Karen's on the call, on the meeting, and maybe she can take a look at this, is that after all these years, when Fort Hunt High School and Groveton High School closed and merged together to become West Potomac High School, that it is time for the children that live in the communities that are in walking distance of Walt Whitman Middle School would be able to attend that school instead of being bused out of their community. So all of these buses contribute to the traffic situation in the area that also affects Gum Springs. Now, next slide.
And
Okay.
Queenie, if I could just interrupt, this is Joe. There's so much here, and I want to make sure we have time for questions too. But as you referenced, Karen Corbett Sanders is on the phone, and I know that there's a lot of folks that'll have questions. So just wanted to kind of check on time. Oh,
Okay.
All right.
This is my last slide.
Thank you.
Do you want me to respond to you, Queenie, regarding Walt Whitman?
No, let me finish the last slide.
Yeah, let's do that, and then we'll do questions.
This is my last slide. And another challenge.
And everybody but Queenie, if you could mute yourself so we could hear a little better, I'd appreciate it.
I'm here.
Okay.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
And yes, and the last challenge that
Karen, we're asking you to wait a minute, okay? Karen?
I'm waiting.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
There we go.
And the last challenge that Gum Springs is facing, and this is a new one for us, and we're calling it residential segregation. And this is when white people move into a Black community, they know that the property is going to be less than if they were to move into another community. And so they take advantage of the low cost housing or affordable housing for that. And then after they get into the community, then they change the identity of the community. And how this gets to be racial segregation is because those groups of white people, when they move into the Black community, they want the community to look more like them, and they exclude the Blacks in that community. And so with them doing that, then so they will do various, use various tools to increase the value of their property. And sometimes those tactics actually exclude the move-in of non-whites, and therefore non-whites will not receive the same benefits. So, and we actually have this happening in Gum Springs. And so we now have this slogan for the racial segregation in Gum Springs is that don't feel entitled to anything you didn't sweat and struggle for. The end.
Thank you, Queenie. Thanks so much. Like I said, there's so much here, and why don't we, folks, if you have questions to follow up, you could put them in the chat or let us know by raising your hand. Karen, I'm going to go to you first to address the question on the high school. I think you offered to give us some background on that.
Hi, I'm happy to address it. It's actually the issue of the middle school, and it goes back to a boundary decision that was done in 1985 when Foster Middle School was closed as part of the realignment of boundaries. And then they made it Walt Whitman. And Walt Whitman is the only middle school in all of Fairfax County where not a single child walks to the school. As many of you know, when I was the chair of the school board, I pushed to have us review our boundary policy to allow us to have a real discussion about schools like Walt Whitman. That we ended up hiring an outside consultant. That outside consultant is reaching out to the community now, and then they will come back to the board with recommendations. It is my intent that I will continue to push for the inappropriateness of addressing the inappropriateness of having Walt Whitman, the only school in the county where everybody walks to the school or everybody buses to the school. It affects multiple issues. You know, the county supported making Walt Whitman a community school, which is somewhat ironic in that we have all the wraparound services, but it actually doesn't have the community supporting the school because the immediate surrounding area doesn't go to the school. So I absolutely hear what Queenie is stating. I am one vote on the board, but I will continue to push for this. This has been something that there was a recent study by VCU that if you all have not seen it, I would recommend everybody on VIC read this study. And the study is about the resegregation of the state of Virginia schools since the 1980s. And so if you don't have it, I can certainly get it to you all.
Yeah, if you could either put it in the chat or send it to us, we'll send it out with the notes from the meeting.
Happy to. I can't put it to the chat because I'm actually multitasking right now, and I'm on 2 Zoom calls. One is a standing committee that I'm supposed to be at for the board, but I did want to see the incredible presentation that was put forth. And if someone can send that to me, I will also share that with our Chief Equity Officer in Fairfax County so they're aware of it. But I will also do what I can to get that presentation, which especially with the poll tax linkage, into the hands of our educators to see if they can share it.
Yeah, the poll tax discussion was really eye-opening for me. That it was so recent, frankly, in the 60s that it went away. Yeah.
Okay, and I hate to do this, guys, but I do have to move to the next meeting. I apologize.
Okay. Thank you for joining us.
Bye-bye.
I'm monitoring the chat for, we do have time for other questions of Queenie and Brenda around the presentation or the issues raised here or comments. You could either raise your hand or pop something into the chat.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, Jan.
Hey, wow. Yeah, there's so much. Queenie, thank you so much. And Brenda too. I'm Jan Buchanan and I'm the Executive Director of Mount Vernon at Home. our offices are in the Sherwood Public Library. I started last April, but I have not worked in the library because of COVID. So getting to know these issues, particularly surrounding this increase, what's going on with gentrification and segregation. I wanted to make a comment. I read the article in the Washington Post Journal this week about Mount Pleasant in DC and how they've tried to, push away the idea of gentrification. And it's not an easy fix, right? You're talking about the white migration and then everything, and then culture and everything gets displaced. And I really hear you on that. It seemed like the crux of what happened in Mount Pleasant was some really good housing laws came into play to just put a stake in the fact that we have to have affordability for the current residents. And I know, Queenie, I can just hear you, the struggle with trying to get the county to listen and that you're in that position of having to integrate all of the different voices in the county. That just shouldn't be your job. So I wanted to applaud you. It's eye-opening for me. I thank you for the presentation. I wanted to point out what they were trying to do in Mount Pleasant. It's an integrated community, but what they've been able to do from the housing policy standpoints of affordability. So thank you.
I see a question in the chat on an issue around the bike lane and Gum Springs potentially opposing the bike lane. And the question is, was that opposed because it narrowed the road? And Bill, I think it might be your question. Do you want to elaborate on the question?
No, I was thinking maybe that this is the wrong time for that question because it doesn't have to do with the question of displacement.
Right.
Just a question of isn't that a way of making it safer for kids and adults who bicycle? And so I just wondered what the reason was, Queenie. And you don't have to answer that now if you want to answer it separately for me. I'm a bicyclist. And so those lanes are very important for my safety. In different places where I bicycle. So.
Bill, why don't you and I get together
We'll talk about it.
And I'll give you the resolution that Gum Springs developed, and then you can pass it on.
Okay, thank you.
Queenie, maybe we could talk a little bit about strategies to combat gentrification and ensuring Gum Springs holds on to its cultural identity, and maybe what VIC could do to help support that. You mentioned a community meeting, I think February 9th. I'm just kind of wondering about those strategies and what support the VIC community might offer.
Well, I think, after we hear from our local elected officials on what they can do to protect Gum Springs, and then I also think that having someone, and I think we will be doing this later, is in the housing department. They have a new deputy director for housing, and but he just got into the position in January, so let him get his feet,
Right.
grounded a little bit, because if you're aware of like Westford, Westford was supposed to have been a co-op for the residents of Gum Springs to be able to have affordable housing. They could have purchased, housing in that manner. And so for lack of a better term, is that the county actually tricked the residents of Gum Springs, had them sell their property to the county on the premise that they were going to build affordable housing and better upgraded housing for them. Instead, what we got was the largest public housing development in the county. And so I think that, and I know that Ron Chase, who's the director of the Gum Springs Museum, he has been pushing for the county to live up to its promise that it's supposed to have been co-op housing and single housing, you know, even with the townhouse look, and not public housing. And we actually have the documents of the county agreeing to doing that, but this is what we have. But now, because of the impact that COVID has had, I don't know how the county would take action to displace those people, because those people are not part of the community. They don't integrate themselves in the community. They have their own community center. Even the manager of the housing, a county staff person, will not even communicate with the rest of Gum Springs. So there needs to be, the county needs to do something about the housing project that they have. And so until we, you know, have an open dialogue with the housing authority, then perhaps the county can come up with a better plan for the community and the residents for affordable housing, and then we can talk with VIC from there.
So you're saying even the affordable housing that was developed is not integrated into the community, really. It's its own, it sounds like its own island almost.
It is. It is. It's public housing. And that was not what the community was told. So, and you have people from all walks of life that lives in the complex. So there is no sense of belonging for them because it's very transient. And, you know, and the community, they want to have people have a sense of belonging, but you don't get that from Westport.
Yeah. There's another question in the chat, I think about your last slide, asking what are the mechanisms being used to disadvantage people of color in the Gum Springs neighborhood? I think that was around the displacement issue.
I think that was, the last slide was really about the residential segregation that I called.
Right,
And,
okay.
and what it is, and I'll tell you where it is. It's Holland Court, which is off of Holland Road. And there are 11 homes there. And what they've done is, under disguise of their association, Holland Court Property Owners Association, they have embedded themselves with the Mount Vernon Council of Citizens Association so that they would have a voice, even though they live in Gum Springs. And Gum Springs, the Civic Association extended more than one invitation for them to join the community that represents them. They declined. And this is the reason why we're calling it residential segregation, is because their response for not wanting to include the rest of the Gum Springs community with their efforts is that they currently enjoy their status.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that status word is what got me going. So, and my response to them was, you cannot create a privilege that's not under your governing documents. And this is what you've done. And my question to the county is, how can you have a community within a community? And this situation is the only situation in the Mount Vernon district. So you just have these 11 white people that have decided that they don't live in Gum Springs. They're going to develop their own rules. They're joining the same organizations that Gum Springs belong to. They're holding meetings. They don't even include Gum Springs.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's, you know, so that's why we are calling it residential segregation, because, but according to their governing documents, their control is only for the property lots on Holland Court. But if nobody challenges them, then they can make decisions that will affect the general population in the community.
Okay. Thank you. That certainly explains the issue. I noticed Regina Coyle from Housing, you mentioned that you're on the line. Did you want to address any of these topics?
Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon. I'm Regina Coyle. I'm in the Department of Housing and Community Development. I am new to housing. I joined in March, but I was in the Department of Planning and Zoning for a long period of time. I truly appreciate the opportunity to be a part of this call, and I have to thank Palace Washington from Neighborhood and Community Services for alerting me and a number of colleagues that this was occurring. We in housing absolutely positively want to begin a dialogue and talk about a number of the issues that were raised here today and others that I'm sure exist. And I'm not sure what the proper way to do that is, but I'm happy to share my contact information with the group and would like to begin as soon as you all are or individuals would like to.
I think that would be wonderful. And if you want to share it, we'll make sure we'll connect you with Queenie and Brenda, and hopefully that's a mechanism to address some of the issues raised today together.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. We have another presentation today. There was so much information here. I think we could spend we certainly could spend the rest of the meeting on this, but Mary Paden, I think you have a presentation on another issue around housing in our area, around the mobile home parks. And maybe we'll go to that and then open it up for questions again. Again, I want to thank Queenie for your time and Brenda for putting together such a thorough presentation. We really appreciate it.
Okay, hi, this is a separate, but as you'll see as I go along, somewhat related presentation that's dealing with mainly a Latino community along Route 1 that live in manufactured home parks. We have the first slide.
Oh no.
Can you mute everybody except me? Who's got the slides?
Bill has moved it to the first slide, the evolving standards slide. Do you see that?
Mobile homes are affordable but vulnerable. I don't see it.
Can you see that, Mary?
There, I got it. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Mobile homes are affordable because they new ones can cost like between say 60 and 100,000. Old ones can be had for 20 or 40,000. And the brand new, most beautiful modular ones they go up to 400,000, but we don't have any of those here. Mm-hmm. They're vulnerable because people own their homes, but they don't loan the land under their homes. So their homes are owned in a chattel state, they call it. It's like buying a car. So you have a higher interest rate and a shorter loan, and you cannot get an FHA mortgage or any kind of mortgage because you don't own the land. Okay, next. Next slide. So when people think about mobile homes, a lot of people think about the ones that had wheels, the ones on the top. And we have a few of those, just a very, very few. But most of the laws and regulations were written for that type of home that actually was mobile. You could move it from one place to another by hooking it up to a car. But in the mid-70s, HUD introduced construction requirements, and you get the kind of rectangular shaped home. That's what we seem to have a lot of. And those require a fairly expensive moving with a truck and a flatbed. And I don't know how it is exactly, but they don't have any wheels. And often they can't be moved without damage, the older ones. They're not really meant to be moved around. They're meant to be moved once from the factory to the pad where they live. And then there's very much more beautiful modern manufactured homes that are coming out, and they're energy efficient. They don't blow up. They don't catch fire in the winter like some of the real old ones, and they're quite nice. Next slide. This is one of the largest manufacturers in the country. And you can see this is a fairly low cost home on the top. The interior ones are from their brochures. I'm not sure which model those are from, but they usually have a pretty open design, a modern floor plan design, and a lot of them are pretty nice inside. Next slide. So the Fairfax County has a task force that looked into mobile homes, and they found these mobile homes that are pointed to in Fairfax County, and there's about 1,700 of them. And there's 2 out in the western part of the country, but most of them are along Route 1, and these are the older homes. And now you're going to have a tour down Route 1. These mobile homes are quite different from each other and have different problems, but they're all very much endangered. So we're going to start at the top with Penda. Here they are. This shows why they're endangered, because they are all in the embark area. Some of them are right smack in the middle of a CBC, and some of them are in what they call the suburban neighborhoods, but they've all been in, as the comp plan has envisioned development where they all live. So we're going to go along and look at some of their issues. Okay, next. Okay, this is Penda. Penda is up, you see that white square, that's the Walmart at Penda. And there's a big mobile home park next to it. And they have about, what does it say there, 90 households. Okay, next slide. And this is what it looks like inside. It's some older, some newer homes. That building is the office. And the home on the top, that's a brand new Clayton home that just got moved in there last week. And I talked to the guys who were working on it. They were building a porch, just getting it settled down there. And I asked them if they knew what the development plans were for that area. And they said, no, nobody had told them that there would be any development there. They were just told that was a mobile home park where they had a space. They could rent that land under them. So next slide. So this shows the mobile home, the plans for that mobile home park. It's actually right under, you see that square in the middle, that's the Walmart. And you see very shadowed underneath the orange spot, the little mobile homes where it says Spring Bank, which was actually a historically Black community that's kind of scattered now. So all those little mobile homes are totally encompassed in a new community business center, which is near a BRT station. You see the little red dot under Penn, that's the BRT station. So on the side, this is from the county website, it says there were 24 advisory group meetings and 50 small, there were all this outreach and meetings, but I don't think, I'd be very surprised if any of those meetings involved any people from this mobile home park. Next slide. Okay, going down a little bit is the Woodley Hills Mobile Home Park, and that's at North Hill. You see those trees above the mobile home park? Show the next slide. The treed area part where the land clearing is, that's going to be a new partly affordable, partly market rate housing complex. The Woodley Hill trailers used to be up on the hill, but the marine clay soil was no good for trailers and they started sliding down, and there was a big crisis about 40 years ago. And the county ended up buying that whole piece of land with HUD money. And they moved the trailers. That's only about half of the original trailers, but they moved what they could down to a flat part of the land. And then they argued for another 30 years over what to build on the forested part, because they bought it with HUD money. It had to be affordable housing, but people wanted to save the trees, so they came up with a compromise. And show the next slide. And that's how it's envisioned to be. There's a lot of senior housing in there and affordable housing. And then you see there's some trees in the back. There is still a park component to the land there. So that's one that took a long time, but that's a very good mobile home park and it's not in any danger. So that's a safe place for mobile homeowners. Okay, next slide. Then down the road a little bit, this is down near the Costco. You see the big white square, that's Costco.
Mhm.
And there's two big mobile home parks there. Audubon is on the left, that's about 700 homes. And then connected to it, coming down the little pink spot at the kind of the foot of Audubon, that's blown up in the right-hand slide, that's Harmony Place. And Harmony Place, Audubon is owned by a corporation that owns mobile homes all over the country. And they're in Chicago, and that's their business, is running mobile home parks. So we're not too worried about Audubon right now, except that it abuts the Embark development area. So at some point that land value is going to go up, and we'll see what happens. Harmony Place is in a little different condition. It's owned by local owners, and it's had some health issues. It's built in a floodplain. You see a little Honey Creek running along there. It has flooded. And for that one, there's some effort is going on to try to stabilize that park and maybe get it bought somehow, or get it made better for the residents and not to develop it. Show the next slide. There's two things going on along Route 1, as everybody knows. There's the widening of Route 1, which does affect Harmony Place. And you see the little blue swimming pool there. That's a drainage pond that they're going to put in, and they're going to take away about 7 trailers from Harmony Place. And we've gotten those trailer owners in touch with the legal aid attorneys, because they are able to negotiate like anybody whose land is taken by a state process that involves federal money. They fall under a condition that's in HUD that says they have to be paid for their property if it's taken. So they go through this long process of getting their property evaluated, and they get rehoused, and there's a lot of long process and paperwork, but there is a process for them anyway to get reimbursed. Now that doesn't exist for any of the other mobile homes. If you're not taken by federal money, you get nothing. Next slide. Okay, this is Angleside and Rays. This is the last one. It's further down the corridor. It's down by Hollywood and Vine and the Best Way. It's on the east side of Route 1. And the Rays is the one on the left, and Angleside is the one on the right that's in pink. They're right next door to each other, and they have the same owner. And this is a local owner. Okay, and they have about 100 units all together, I guess. So let's have the next slide. Next. And this is what Angleside looks like. Now go back one, go to the photograph.
Yep.
So this is Angleside has a mix of homes, but they do have some of the more modern homes that look like real houses. And it's quite a nice community. Go through there, and everybody decorates for holidays, and they had all that Christmas lights up. They had Halloween stuff up. So it's a really good community. Okay, next slide. Next. And this is the Richmond Highway plan. They are putting another drainage pond in at the front of Angleside, but it doesn't seem to be affecting the trailers in any way. However, there's another plan going on regarding Embark. Show the next slide. So you can see the little trailers under the black sign, under the black words. And that's where the trailer park is. And then just to the right of that is the Best Way. And then to the right of that, where the shape of land gets smaller, that's the Hollywood and Vine. And that has been designated as a parcel that the county wanted to see consolidated as part of the Embark plan. And it's called a suburban neighborhood area. And in the planning, it's supposed to get like 16 to 20 residential units per acre plus some commercial. And they wanted to see that developed into kind of a town center with, you know, like a little village thing with some residential and some stores and shops and stuff. So they got a proposal, and the proposal would make this higher density than is in any other suburban neighborhood. It would go up to 30 residential units per acre. And it's farther. You see that half-mile radius sign, kind of a curve. The idea with Embark was to put the highest density within a half-mile walk of the BRT stations. So you can see that the trailer parks are outside the half-mile mark. They're not supposed to be in that very highest density. And then the other hesitancy they had is they didn't have this when they made it, when they recommended it, but now they're saying, well, mobile homes are a source of affordable housing. So what are we gonna do with these 100 people? You know, if we build buildings there. So show the next slide. Wake up, Joe. Next slide. There we go. This is the proposed amendment. This is the 584 units with 2 towers that would be 5 to 8 stories tall. It would be very dense housing in there. And the county's kind of pushing back on this plan. They want all the people housed in here somehow. But the developer, I don't know, it's kind of a funny situation for the developer. But show the next slide. You'll see how the people at the trailer park reacted to this plan. There they are. They don't want to move. They want to keep their community. They're telling you they're working people. Their life savings is invested in these homes. They want to stay here with their friends, their neighbors, etc. So they're not happy about this. They were not consulted on this, by the way. We told them about it, South County Task Force, because I was on the local planning group and I alerted the church that they work with. And so they showed up at the meetings. But they weren't told by the owner or told by the developer or told by the county before that. So next slide. So these are the things they've done. They had a rally that you just saw at the trailer park. They've written over 50 letters, you know, saying that they live there and they don't want to move and how much they paid for their house. And, you know, they wouldn't get anything for it according to current rules. They made a 10-minute video and 4 video interviews. They called in to the Planning Commission remote hearing, and they protested at the end of 2 local planning Zoom meetings because they are not, none of the residents are represented on the local planning committee that this will go, that approved this plan to go forward, and the plan will come back to for being worked up. They are not represented on that. Okay, next slide.
Mary, could I ask just a quick clarifying question? So is part of the issue that when whether someone in one of these parks owns the land, owns their, basically that they're not the owner of the land, they rent the land, they own their building.
Right.
So the issue is the land being sold out from under them and them
exactly.
not compensated.
Right. They're not
and
compensated for their building.
And then in the HUD process, in the other one, there are regulations that says even the building owner, even if they don't own the land, has to, or the resident has to be compensated. But in other situations, that's not the case.
That's not the case.
Okay, thank you.
The only thing they would get is in a law last year passed by Paul Krizak, our delegate, that said they would get $3,500 in moving fees. And that's really not even quite enough to move the trailer. Plus, there's no place to move it in Fairfax. As you can see, all these mobile home parks are pretty full. There's no other place they could go and still go to their same school and their same doctor and et cetera. So here's one of the residents who we interviewed at Ingleside, and it says he bought his house 15 years ago for 22. Put another 10,000 into it, and they both work. And can you hit that and see if he can play? This is 2 minutes. He just talks. I wanted you to meet some of the residents here, and we didn't bring them, so we got a video.
Okay, I'm working on it. I have to get to it.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Oscar Pinto. I live here since 2016 with my wife and my two kids. We live in Mellon Street. We choose to live here instead of living in an apartment because I've been living in an apartment for a while, and it's so much different to live in my beautiful mobile home here. The community is so great. We make this place like it's a whole one family. All we know each other, and we work so hard to buy the house. We work days, nights, 3 jobs, saving money, and finally we bought it, and we live here so happy. We we happy here, and we want to be here for us and for our kids too. They love to live here. One goes to Whitman Middle School. He's 13 years old. He's so happy to live here. My younger kid, he's 10. He goes to Willie Hills, and they love this area. We love these buildings. We don't want to move. And now my wife and I, we've been thinking, and we talk every night what we're gonna do. We want you, everybody, to see us and help us. To that way we stay together. It's a community. She worked for Fairfax County Public School, and I work in a restaurant as a professional training. I worked there for 20 years, and I've been living here for almost all my life, and I love to live here. This is a beautiful place to live. I paid 22,000 when we bought the house, and we fixed a few things, and we spent another 10,000. So total, we'd be like $30,000. We worked so hard to get the money, days and nights.
Okay, thanks. Go to the next slide.
Yep, hold on. I have to get
Okay.
back to the slide.
Okay, good work, Bill.
There we go. Got it?
Yeah, okay, now next slide. Okay, so why don't they just move? You know, progress is coming. You gotta move when you gotta move. You don't own the land, just get off. And you can hear what was said in the video. They have a great community. Schools are tied into their larger community. They have healthcare practitioners, church. You know, this is a transportation. They have a bus stop right out in front. They have all the amenities that they are looking for in this particular geographic location. They own their home. They wouldn't get any money for it. There's no place to move the home in Fairfax County. They could move it down to Prince William or Manassas or Richmond, but then they've disrupted all their connections, and there's no compensation for their investment. So these are the reasons that they've given us for why they don't want to move from that area. Okay, next. So the planning department looked very deep and found some language in Appendix 10 of the Comprehensive Plan of Fairfax County that was actually sympathetic to mobile homes as a source of affordable housing. But it pointed out that the underlying zoning is in conflict. The underlying zoning assumes that all the parks would be redeveloped. So they have two zoning. They have a zoning as a mobile home park, and then they also seem to have another zoning as a commercial, a C8 zoning, for example, so they can rezone it. They don't have to get rezoned in order to build other things there, to get rid of the mobile parks, mobile homes, and build something else. So this was envisioned in whoever did the zoning and planning, that all these mobile homes would be moved out back in the days when they had wheels. But the writers of the comprehensive plan way back when in Appendix 10 said we should study this further and see which thing we want to do. So next slide. Next. So meanwhile, in the last couple of years, there's sprung up a statewide group called Manufactured Home Community Coalition of Virginia. And they are working with different localities. They see affordable mobile homes as an integral part of the affordable housing spectrum. And their work for the improvement of parks and replacement of the unsafe old units. They try to initiate rehab and repair initiatives for parks and code enforcement for the old parks that aren't in such good shape. That would be like Harmony Place. And they represent the interests of the residents. There's an issue, one of the issues is that the residents are not normally consulted or informed in this process of this whole parcel, 25-acre parcel that the county wants to redevelop. The only people who really live there, these 109 mobile homeowners, and they somehow weren't part of the deal. They may or may not get relocated, and people may or may not feel sorry for them, and everybody may or may not rush to their assistance, but they're not incorporated in the deal making. And another thing that's very exciting that's going on is that this coalition is engaging with numerous organizations to look at new and innovative financing strategies for manufactured housing. The problem that they don't own the land can be solved in several ways, or has been around the county. One is that a nonprofit owner buys the land and runs it as a nonprofit, and then putting the profits back into the community, back into the park. And that's been done by Habitat for Humanity and by a number of other groups like that around the state. Another idea is that the mobile homeowners get little tiny plots of land underneath their mobile home. And that's been done in some mobile home parks in the state. And the third idea is that you have some kind of a cooperative formed that would be like a building cooperative, where the owners kind of bought into it and they manage their park. All of these involve buying the land from the park owner. And park owners are somewhat reluctant to sell because it's a very profitable business for them, and the land values are very high along Route 1 right now because of the proposed development. Okay, next slide. I've got, I think, only two more. County has an affordable housing preservation task force going on. They have a subcommittee on mobile home parks. And overall, they're looking at different ways housing can be preserved. They're prioritizing properties or neighborhoods, and they're coming up with a set of preservation strategies. And they have a whole set of recommendations on mobile home parks. And we're waiting for those to come out probably February or March. Okay, next slide. Okay, so next steps, we're watching for those recommendations, and we're going to lobby hard for them. These rules and regulations really need updating, and we're lobbying for them from the point of view of the mobile home park residents. We're taking our lead from them. We want them to have a voice. And these people are not trees and bushes to be cleared from the land. They're real live people and families. And, they need to be part of this process, even though legally they don't. I know that they don't own the land, and legally they're not part of the process, but morally, I think you really need to include people who live on the land. And we will support them in what they want to do. If they want to fight to stay, okay. If somebody makes them a better offer, if the county comes up with a really great offer and says, we're going to give you all co-ops or whatever, and that's what they want, then we'll support that. We're not doing anything that they don't feel will be in their best interest. Okay, so I think that's the end, isn't it? Yep.
And Mary, you're talking about the South County Task Force leadership in supporting the residents?
Right, the South County Task Force and the Good Shepherd Catholic Church that supports them.
Yeah.
And we've gotten a number of other people. We have a group called Allies of Ingleside Rays. We sent a petition to the Board of Supervisors. They passed through the development planning proposal. And we got 270 signatures on it, which is pretty good. And we got those countywide. A lot of them were organizations and others were individuals.
I see a question in the chat around the county having in addition to having an affordable preservation strategy for all affordable housing. Do you or the county's HDC have an estimate of the growth potential for new affordable mobile homes in our county using county land potentially, I guess, to expand affordable housing? Or is that even?
I don't think anyone's interested in that. But what I could see is, I know the county owns little tiny pieces of land all over the place. And I could see them using that for some modular housing, which is kind of the upscale version of manufactured housing. And they could build very nice looking little homes that were not very expensive. I mean, they don't have to be that little, they can fit a family, but they could put up those homes for very low price. And they're very energy efficient and very modern materials and all that, and sell those to people to own.
I wonder, is there any discussion if the county is going to develop some of this land for affordable housing, that the residents would have rights to a unit in those affordable housing developments, or is it not for affordable housing that it might be developed?
Well, he's talking about developing 584 units. And if all the residents got an apartment, which is not really what they want, that would mean it's being developed with 20% affordable housing. And most of the developers are fighting the county right now on a new regulation that they do 8% affordable housing. So I don't know, that would be a huge amount of affordable housing to put in that development. Yeah. Whether they can do that or not, I don't know. If they can do it in a way that keeps their community, they put them all in the same little area. I mean, I think, they might go for something like that, but I don't see any mechanism. I don't see any money. I don't see any ways under our current policies to get that done. Right. And I see Allison's reminding us that the owner of Angleside claims he's not selling. He does claim he's not selling it. In fact, all the property owners along there say they're not, in that development area, say they're not selling, which makes it very strange that the Board of Supervisors passed this development plan into the work plan. So I'm very confused about what's going on in terms of why they're doing that, but they did it at the meeting last week, and they want the planning department they're going to wait until after the new recommendations come from the Affordable Housing Preservation Committee. But then after that, they're going to start working on this plan. And the owner says he won't sell for 20 years, and the other owner said they won't. I don't know. They'll have to figure that out. But they did approve the plan. All the supervisors voted yes. Okay. They didn't approve that exact plan. They approved putting this into a planning process that it will result in redevelopment of this area or not, but it's being considered.
I see David's question. Mary, is there a group of only residents at Ingleside and Rays that represent them in these discussions?
They have leaders, but they haven't elected leaders. So I think we're going to try to ask them to do some kind of formal designation of leadership. There are certain people that have been taking the initiative to do things. But I think they need to have an election.
And then I see a question from Jerry Poggi about the One University HCD project, which is a redevelopment of the Robinson Square neighborhood, asking if those in the public housing community, how are they accommodated? And I do know that each of those families has a right to, after construction, move back into the newly developed affordable housing units. But I think it's that's,
Well, those are affordable housing, and
Right.
they could go in there. It's
Right.
a large affordable housing. This is
large
not
affordable
affordable housing. What they're proposing on this land is not affordable. It's market rate, and it would be subject to a proffer. And the proffer is what's 8%
Mhm.
of workforce affordable housing. And this would require at least 20%, which is,
Right.
I don't know if you could
Right.
find developers that think they can do that.
It strikes me there's a common thread between these two topics. You know, Queenie in her presentation, after Brenda took us through the history at Gum Springs, talked about land, traffic, and residential segregation. And there's aspects of the impact of development in you know, and residential segregation almost in this discussion as well, I think.
Well, I think the other thread is people not being heard or not being asked. People who living in certain places are being a little bit ignored. And one might say because of their income status and their color, but they are not part of the decision-making apparatus as much as they should be.
How can VIC support this effort?
Well, I can put VIC on the, when there's something to be done, I can definitely put VIC, a call to action out. I think it's going to be quiet for a while. I think the residents will try to get them organized into elections, and I don't see anything happening right away, but we got to keep a sharp eye on it because they're not, they don't call us. We have to watch it.
Right.
Watch it.
I think if you put us on action alerts, then we can make sure, if it goes to the co-facilitators and Christina, we can, Christina, we'll just make a blanket thing that Christina, if you get an action alert about this, send it to the VIC membership, just do it. And then at least then people will have a chance to take action.
Yeah, if anybody knows any big funders who would be interested in a project like this, or nonprofits who would be interested in running a place, I don't think Angleside's up for that, but Harmony Place might be interesting to line up some people to see if they're interested in there. Now, that owner has not said they will sell either, so we don't know, but it would help to envision some kind of future.
Right.
It's more healthy, at least for Harmony Place.
I'd like to offer Queenie and Brenda any closing thoughts after this discussion about how VIC can help, or any other thoughts of the.
Well, I appreciate the invitation and thanks for the opportunity for presenting to you about the issues that threaten Gum Springs, and hopefully we will be able to resolve or at least kind of mitigate the situations that's more manageable, and definitely will keep the communication lines open with VIC, and hope that VIC will also reach out to Gum Springs for any projects that they would like for us to partner on. It doesn't matter what the issue is or the project. Gum Springs is ready, willing, able, and ready to go.
Wonderful. Look forward to building a greater partnership.
I would just like to say that I think for each of you, as you ride around the county and you see an African-American church, understand that where that African-American church at one time was a thriving African-American community. And that community no longer exists. And with that in mind, to remember that everyone is of value, regardless of what color or what ethnic background they come from. And that if we're truly going to have a true equal Fairfax, that we have to give everyone a voice and to see them as being valuable.
Thank you, Brenda. That's powerful. the point of wherever you see a church, there used to be a community, and some of those have been bought up and displaced. And we're talking about other communities that are facing that same danger, right? The communities right here in Gum Springs, and frankly, these mobile home parks as well.
Yes.
Or as one person posted in the chat, this is a justice issue.
Right.
Be concerned about.
Yeah, the NAACP has been using the term housing justice lately. I kind of like that.
I see Carrie Kincannon.
Ann has her hand up.
Oh, Ann, please go ahead.
You're muted.
I think it would be helpful. I think it would be helpful for VIC members to go to their own, constituents and organizations and try to educate them that, this is happening, because I think many people are unaware of it.
Yeah,
I would agree with that. I think VIC, everybody who attends VIC meetings has a whole constituency behind them. And I don't know how much of what we do here goes back to the larger groups. And I think this is something that's right in the community. Both of these issues are things that are happening in the community that their larger groups should know about.
Along those lines, I mean, it would be very helpful to get, copies of the presentations. So,
They'll be sent out to everybody. I'll make sure of that. And we don't have Vic Marshall today, unfortunately, taking notes. So I'm going to try to cobble some notes together from the chat and the conversation, so that we can. I'll get those out in the next couple of days, so that you will all have copies. And then
Bill, to that effort, Bill and Joe, because Black history is so often lost, as Brenda noted and Queenie, this needs to be preserved in a more formal format so it's accessible to the public, whether it's a Fairfax Historical Society, Fairfax County Library, somewhere where it's not lost in the archives of somebody's home computer. So if we can put it maybe on YouTube and put a link on the VIC website, for example, but somehow to, that would be ideal, is put it on YouTube and a VIC website. And, if VIC doesn't have a YouTube channel, but I can at least offer my church as a site. I haven't talked to my communications people, but we have a YouTube, and we would be happy to host it if that's needed. But we need to not lose the history.
Yeah, there's a lot of history at the Gum Springs Historical Association too, and it's not many visitors during COVID, but there's certainly a lot published on the history of Gum Springs online already. And there's a book and there's articles, and it's just fascinating. I'm telling you, I've read a lot of it, and it's amazing what that community did.
Okay. Any other closing comments, folks?
Yeah, we've taken our full time. We didn't have a chance for introductions and announcements. We apologize, but these things were important to hear. So
just one quick announcement. Our next meeting, March 3rd, will be the health department talking to us about issues around the pandemic and the disease, vaccination, and the Route 1 corridor. So put that on your calendar at the same time. And again, on behalf of VIC, I'd like to thank Queenie Cox and Brenda Faison for the presentations on Gum Spring. Very, very powerful and educational. We appreciate it. And Mary, for your work on the mobile home park and the issues that you work on in your presentation today as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Mary. Thanks, Queenie. Thanks, Brett.
Okay. Bye.
Bye all.